Ancestral Healing Summit with my guest, Suzanne Giesemann. Our topic today is connecting with the past to heal your future. Relationship repair beyond the veil. Suzanne Giesemann is a former Navy commander and commanding officer who's now a mystic, medium, and author. Her verified connection with those in the non-physical realms allows her to share a unique and personal perspective on ancestral healing. Suzanne, I am so grateful for you joining us today. Thank you. Welcome.
Well, Lisa, it's always an honor to share with you and everybody listening. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I love your input into these topics. And so for people who might not be familiar with your work and your teachings it's been developed and steered by your own guidance from spirit, and you've got sort of an interesting story on how that began. So can you give us a little background and tell us, how did you learn to trust what you were being shown?
Oh, yes. It began after the unexpected death of my stepdaughter, who was struck by lightning. I saw her at the funeral, her body, and I just knew that she could not be dead and gone. So I began that week meditating to try to connect with her personally, having heard about this concept of an afterlife, but not having any experience or proof of it. And that meditative practice just led me to open up to the consciousness that's available to all of us because it's our fundamental nature. And I've had so many adventures in consciousness that come with evidence, things I can verify later, or things that people I sit with now verify on the spot, that shows me that we are all part of one big web, the physical world and the non-physical world, and all working together for the greatest possible good. And I just can't not do this work and love sharing with people that it's very real.
Absolutely. And with regard specifically to ancestral healing, because mediumship it's a big picture. So if we're narrowing the focus to specifically working with ancestors, I know that you've given mediumship to readings to people who've talked about getting powerful healing from relationship issues that weren't able to be worked out in other ways through traditional means. I'd love if you'd share some examples.
Yes, I trained once I found out that you can learn how to do this, because that's an important point. I'm not what's called a born medium. You read my history there of being the Navy commander, and that was my life, very much focused on the physical world. But once I found out that we can learn to be mediums, and there are practices that we can do every day to raise the quality of our consciousness and the clarity of our connection, I've worked at doing that. And so having been trained in traditional mediumship, which I define as doing readings for people who want to connect directly with loved ones who have passed, and trained in evidential mediumship, meaning not just lovely messages from those ancestors, but evidence that it's really them. The whole point of traditional mediumship is the healing, the comfort, and the awareness that life is eternal. So those ancestors are accessible to us, even though they may have been gone for generations. So when I sit to do a reading with someone one-on-one, my main intention is always, may this session serve the greatest good. And the important point of that is that we not just provide healing for those here in physical form, but for those across the veil as well. Because as you know, many people take issues with them when they die, unresolved issues of relationship, things that still need forgiveness, thank yous people still need to give on both sides of the veil. And that's why we're called mediums. We are the intermediary, the person in the medium that can allow that interaction to take place. And it's magical. Yeah.
It absolutely is. And if you don't mind, I'll even share a story about how you've helped me with that. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. This lamp right behind me belonged to my mother. And when you and I were talking once online, this lamp started flashing. And it never flashes at all. And I was saying, well, that's interesting. And you said, I'm hearing mom. And you proceeded to give me information. My mom suddenly pushed her way through and gave not only evidential information that I could verify, but it was deeply healing, because when she passed, things were a little there were some loose ends that weren't tied up, but because of the information that you were able to share, and you also told me watch for owls. Within the next 3 days, I saw like 6 or 7 not real live owls. I live in a place where they don't live around here, but I kept having owl sightings, and it really did confirm. And as far as ancestral healing goes, it really did help me to come to peace with some things that we left unfinished. So I think that in itself is a wonderful example of how this can actually help.
And the important thing is that these types of healings don't just happen if you seek out a medium. We all have the capability to interact with our loved ones who have passed at any time. They're as close as our breath. They don't have to come from some faraway place. Their dimension is simply like another station on one big radio channel. We're at one frequency, they're at another. I'm going to go out on a limb here, Lisa, and you can edit this out if you want or not. But as you talked about that light, I suddenly got goosebumps, and I saw your mother showing me a banana. If you haven't recently just had a banana, I'm hearing ding, 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 talk about potassium, and you possibly having some low energy lately, to check your potassium levels. That's from Mom. So that's actual, I don't normally do medical stuff, but it feels like a physical healing issue that I'm supposed to bring up for you.
Well, that's very interesting. I've got bananas in my kitchen that are going brown. I haven't been eating them, so thank you for that. I will add them to my cereal in the morning.
Okay.
All right. You have other examples of how this has actually happened with clients working with ancestors. Would you care to share them?
Oh, and indeed, the person who just said ding, ding, ding to me is my friend Brenda, who many of my Shift Network students know is a friend of mine from the physical world who passed in 2018 and is now my mediumship guide. And so she supports me in this work. But when I first knew her, I did a reading for her. And her father came through with an apology for basically rejecting her. They had years of very poor relationship because he never accepted her homosexuality and really demeaned her for her appearance. And it turns out that his religious beliefs just said, he literally preached to other people that was an abomination. And she just felt, well, you can imagine how she felt for her whole life. And to have her father come through and say that was tremendously healing for her. I've heard from others that she just talked and talked about how that helped her. What's interesting, though, is how I said earlier, it helps on both sides of the veil. He said in that reading that he needed to make his amends, but he was just confused when he got to the other side to find that what he had been preaching for so many years was not really helpful, and that we shouldn't be judging each other. And so he was still working on undoing those thought patterns that his whole energy field had been immersed in. And another medium did a reading for her later, knew nothing about this mediumship reading, and said, your father's coming through, and he says he's moved past that stuck point now. So you see how even across the veil, we continue growing. The soul can continue its healing, and the healing goes both ways.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, not only would it have been healing for the people involved, but for people who are hearing this now, hearing that message, I think is it's going to be greatly appreciated by many people. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a release, an emotional release, but even across the veil. So it's such a blessing.
Yeah. Now, well, let's talk about that, the ripple effect that it actually is. I think some people have a hard time wrapping their minds around how you can actually heal backwards. Things that have already happened that seem non-changeable actually can be affected.
Oh my gosh. I had a client not too long ago whose father and uncle came through from the other side. And I was shown tremendous sexual abuse. and the apologies that came through were tremendous. But in that reading, her guides and their guides showed her a way to effect healing, to allow her to release what she'd been holding inside ever since that abuse took place in her teenage years. She actually went through with this process that they showed her. And do you know, she dropped 2 dress sizes without any diet. She had been holding on to this weight that was a protective shame. It was her shame, and it was protecting her from feeling that and from letting other people's love get in. And it just literally melted away. I saw a picture of her afterwards, about 2 months after the reading. She hadn't been sick. She looked vibrant. She was glowing. And she said that in this forgiveness ritual that they suggested that she do, she felt total forgiveness for them, and all this love poured in to replace that blockage that had been there for decades. It was one of the most tremendous healings that I've heard of. And all for things that happened years and years and years ago.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a bit about forgiveness then, because it is a really powerful tool. As far as the ancestral healing goes, how can, for somebody who isn't necessarily doesn't have access to a medium and is maybe able to receive their own messages, how can connecting with spirit help with forgiveness, especially when we're talking about such an extremely heavy issue?
Oh, yes.
No pun intended.
The whole point of mediumship is to show that you and I and all of us are souls here and now. This communication takes place soul to soul. It's not Suzanne the human who does this connection. It's not you who would do the connection. You must shift your awareness to the fact that you're so much more than your body. So if you are a soul, the soul knows nothing but forgiveness. So just having that awareness that the soul of our loved ones would never have hurt us. It's our humanity that gets in the way. It blocks us from being aware of this light that's within us already. So once we realize we are souls, we can communicate soul to soul with each other, feel compassion for those who made tremendous mistakes in some cases, and effect healing without an intermediary. It takes moments to forgive someone, even if we've carried that stone around on our chest for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that makes so much sense. I'm wondering for the people who have not been able to connect, ancestors, relatives, people who aren't even gone for very long, can feel so very far away. But with your work, you say that they're right here. They're not far away at all.
They are, and we just have to realize that what do we mean by here? In awareness. Everything we experience is merely an experience in awareness of consciousness. Actually, all that we see is a projection of consciousness. So if our loved one's experience is also consciousness, where is consciousness? It's not out there. All there is awareness. So we meet them in the one place we all share in common, experience of existing. I am consciousness in expression. So you just shut out this projection, the external world, close your eyes or not, and just become aware. I will meet you here in awareness. Let's go to the heart, the bridge. Let's talk. And you say for those who haven't made a connection, what do? You don't need to hear voices, see visuals. It becomes a matter of trusting, asking for them to be near. And you may just say, I don't see you, I don't sense you, but I'm going to trust that you hear me. I need to get this off my chest. And that's what Mary, my client who had such a tremendous healing, was advised to do. She went into a room, she looked at the tall lamp and said, that's going to be Dad. The smaller lamp is going to be my uncle. She was wise enough to call in a counselor, got her on Zoom, to be present with her and hold space while she went through this ordeal, because the guide said it's going to bring up a lot of stuff and you are going to cry. You can scream and wail. And she called in her father and uncle, and she couldn't see them, but she had these props to represent them. And she just went at them and just let out all of her anger and all of her grief and rage. She said she was cursing, and then she felt them. Then she felt them, and she felt their remorse, and she felt their forgiveness. She got the trust by having the reading. There was so much evidence, she couldn't deny it was them. Then she took that positive action and got her miracle. So it's all the web. You see all the pieces coming together, and that's all because we all share this same loving source that wants nothing more than for us to heal.
Well, now I wonder, I'm just sort of throwing this question at you. I don't know if you even have an answer for this, but in your experience, have you ever have people asked you, why did this happen to me? Let's talk about the whys. What's going on with this?
People ask that a lot. And one of the main pieces of guidance I get from my guides is that asking why is not helpful. It's what can I do to heal from this that happened? But the bottom line is that the underlying why to any act that hurts people is that people are ignorant to who our greater self is. If we knew we were souls, and if we remembered we came here for the experience of being human and experiencing all aspects of humanity, then we would not hurt each other. But you can just look at people that hurt each other and say, those people are not aware of the soul within them. And until they awaken, they may continue to hurt people, and hurt people go on to hurt other people. We lash out. And so the main task here is to remember who we are as souls in human form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I understand that you've had some interesting experiences with certain souls coming through in readings, but with otherworldly representatives speaking for them. So can you talk a bit about how we're protected from those who might have harmed us?
This has been stunning. And in fact, Mary's reading was one example of that with her father and her uncle, but it happened about a month prior to hers. For the first time in my readings, I had a father come in from spirit. I knew he was the father, but he was cocooned, is the only way I can put it. It looked like a chrysalis around him, like a mummy, but his head was showing above here. Yet he was not allowed to talk, and he was accompanied by two light beings. All of this was just in my awareness. I didn't see it so clearly that I could draw it. I just knew he was escorted in by loving beings, but he was not allowed to talk. Why? The guides told me, tell the daughter, your father is aware he created a house of horrors for her growing up. And she said, that's exactly what I called it. And the guide spoke for him, saying, again, terrible cases of sexual abuse and horrors beyond imagining. And I'm sorry to bring this down, but it's so healing. She said, yes, this is really heavy, but this man in spirit murdered and molested multiple teenage boys. Can you see why that man was not allowed to speak? And yet, he was accompanied by loving beings who told us she had nothing to fear. He was in a state of awareness. Some people might call it a place, but really it's just a state of being in the non-physical world where his story of his life, the incarnation he had, was being deconditioned. He was being relieved of all of that, but he had to relive it all for the lessons that came from it all. but always surrounded by loving beings so that he would never forget what this life is all about. And they said only when all of that had been processed would that incarnation at all be allowed to merge back in with his greater soul. Tremendous teaching. And so when in the later reading with Mary, her father and uncle came in, both of them were cocooned. Yet one of them, the one with the lesser transgressions, was allowed to speak. So to me, this shows how those in spirit know that those here don't need any more hurt, don't need any more pain, and they don't have to worry about their loved ones doing anything to hurt them. They're being lovingly cared for, but oh, there are lessons still to be learned.
I am so glad that you brought this up. It is admittedly very heavy, and this isn't necessarily where we intended to go with this, but
no, but it's healing from the ancestors.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, since you brought this up, let's go there. I've got a dear friend who had a similar experience. Her father was a horrible story, murder in the family, et cetera, horrible sexual abuse. And she really struggles with the question of why, but because her father is now dead, what is happening with him? What is their karma? How does he get healed? Not that people who are alive today really care about his healing, because he did such horrible things, and people are generally more concerned about healing the human being who is still living and still living with the repercussions of this. But let's talk about, what is the process of healing somebody? You've already touched on it, but can we go into that just a little deeper? How does somebody who did these horrible things heal this?
Well, again, he is being shown through the life review that I understand we all go through. Every person he hurt, and he feels and can do nothing about it, the full effect of his actions on them. Mm-hmm. As he's receiving insights from the guides about what life is really all about. Not judgment from them, but definitely judging himself. So now when the soul is ready to, at some point, now be totally aware of its greater soul, if that makes any sense, I'm trying to put into words something that it's very hard for us as humans to wrap our heads around. At some point, that greater soul is going to say, now let's accept another incarnation, but this time we're going to have to work on those issues from another angle. That's the karma part. Doesn't mean he's necessarily going to go back and suffer. We don't deliberately go in to suffer. We go in to raise the quality of our consciousness. So what is the best way to do that? Maybe he's going to end up working in an abusive shelter for people who were abused. It doesn't have to be you were nasty to someone, now somebody's going to be nasty to you. It's going to be what offers the most growth for the soul.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, with regard to the life review, again, I'm glad you brought this up, because my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the life review happens during the process of crossing the veil, and that it's relatively brief, that you sort of just see what has happened, and you do feel and experience everything that you've said and done from the perspective of the people that were involved. But it sounds like what you're talking about here is that this is a longer process. This isn't just watching a movie of one's life. This is being sort of contained for a period of time.
As you're asking that question, I'm tuning in, and I have my main guides over here. My friend Brenda's over here, and Brenda's saying she cleared out all that stuff before she crossed the veil. She really worked to heal herself while still in human form. And she says, short movie, because she had already known anybody that she needed to make amends with. But the guides are now saying people who don't work on their consciousness, their spiritual path, there's no time across the veil. But yes, to our understanding, it's ongoing until full acceptance of any transgressions takes place. So, we humans want to put things in time because we live in a world with time. But across the veil, it's what does the soul need? How will it benefit from this? And it's a process.
Right, right. Okay.
But let me correct something for you, Lisa. We have this feeling, you made a statement there that it's during the process of crossing over. I can tell you a story about a soul that may not have completely gone to the light. That's a whole different story. But this people cross over. When you die, you're already in the non-physical world. There are certain steps like the life review, but it doesn't mean they haven't crossed over. He's going through that process. So it's not like he was stuck. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, since we're on the topic, in the ancestral healing world, there are cautions to not work with or communicate with unwell ancestors. That we should only try to work with those who have been gone a while, for lack of a better way of saying it. People who have done their work and they are now healed, and they can now be accessed to help heal the people who are still living, the descendants, etc. So we don't communicate with the ones who are still unhealed. So, what are your thoughts on that? That's sort of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I have no experience with that, and I haven't been taught that, and I share these stories because it shows to me that we can connect with anybody, and if it will serve the greater good, we will make that connection. I can't see, and my guides say, trust this, any reason why our sending love to those who need it most, those who hurt other people, would not be helpful. Can you? It's all about love and healing. Why would we keep that away from them? Why would we not try to heal ourselves if it brings more love into the whole equation? So reach out at any time. That's why we're here, to heal, to love, to evolve.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back to talking about forgiveness a bit. I love the way that Oprah describes forgiveness. It's not saying that something that someone did is okay. It's accepting the fact that the past, that it can't be changed. That you're accepting that what happened happened. What are your thoughts on forgiveness?
Absolutely. We're not saying that what happened was right. It's just that we now understand that you were doing the best you could at that time, or you didn't understand what was going on, or I know you wouldn't have hurt me. And that until I forgive you, I'm going to hurt as well. We have to just get that into the equation there if we really want to move on. I remember a reading for a woman whose mother came in, and this client did not want to hear from her mother. And the mother came with a huge apology. I see a hand come down and the head hang down, and that means an apology. So I asked her why, and she was truly, not motherly. I'll put it that way. I don't want to use negative words, but the mother, it came through in that reading, had forced her daughter, my client, to have an abortion. When that came out, the woman burst out crying. And the mother said, I was wrong. And that little soul, the light of that soul came through in the reading. And the woman had just carried around anger at her mother for years, thinking that she could have had that child. She wanted to love that child. And this little soul came through and said, I have loved you my whole life. I've been here all along with you. Ooh, talk about healing. I'll tell you, in that reading, my client was not yet ready to forgive her mother. And that's okay. The seed was planted, and that's part of my client's spiritual path, to know that, we each heal at our own pace, but at least now from this side of the veil, mother was able to show that. And with that evidence that came through that she really still exists, that shows that it is worth working on still. It always is.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. So, if somebody listening would like to begin making a connection, what are some good first steps? Maybe you can walk us through a process of what to do.
Sure. I teach every time I do a class my 7-step method that I call the Bless Me method, because it starts with the letters BLESSME. And it's simply a process to get you into an expanded state of awareness and shift your focus to the non-physical world and have an experience in that higher state. Higher doesn't mean better, doesn't mean far away. It just means like a higher number on the channel, on the frequency channel. And it's the whole reason why we normally don't feel our loved ones. Without the dense energy of the physical body, we call that a higher state of being. So bless me stands for breathe. You sit and you take a few very deep breaths to trigger your relaxation response, but always go at this with an intention. In this case, it would be the intention to connect with a specific loved one for healing to take place. Whether to say something that you never got to say, like thank you or I'm sorry, please forgive me, because it goes both ways. So many people, Lisa, carry around guilt because of things they feel their loved ones are still judging. I need to interrupt my process here and just say that once we get across the veil, our loved ones see why we all do the things we did, and that forgiveness is there. So we take a few deep breaths, going back to my process, and then the L stands for lift your mood and lift your vibration, and gratitude will get you to that lift faster than anything. So just think of something you're grateful for or someone you love with all your heart. You'll feel a shift in your energy. And then E, expand your field of awareness with a breath. Is what I do. I don't use the hands, but I just send it out visually with the breath. And then the first S stands for surrender. We're surrendering our focus on our human being, the human state. We're sure familiar with that. So let's just set that aside for a minute, accept that we are also a soul. And the second S stands for shift. So we shift our awareness to being that soul. And some of you right now, I hear you, you're saying, well, how do I know what that feels like? It's who you are. It's your basic essence. Without the story of you, without all the drama, just sit in the chair and just be present with no memories, no story, just be this light. You should feel a bit peaceful when there's no story. So the second S, shift. I just, with intention, shift my focus to being. The intention is what does it. So there's nothing to do other than have an intention to shift to the soul awareness. The way you'll know it happened is because the next two steps is where you make that connection. M stands for merge. This is when you say, okay, specific loved one, come be present with me now. Merge your energy field with mine. And sitting there as the soul you are, asking your loved one to merge with you. E stands for experience whatever shift takes place. So maybe you'll feel a presence. Maybe you'll see a bunch of pictures. Maybe you'll hear a voice, feel a tingling. Just scan with all of your soul senses what has shifted, what you're experiencing. If you experience nothing at all because you're not used to doing this, just start talking to them. Say what needs to be said. I'm telling you, I'm guaranteeing you, because you went through that process with intention and you specifically invited them from the heart, they're here. So talk to them in this state and ask questions. And when you say, I'm making this up, tell that little human to step aside again, shift back and keep talking. Might want to take some notes, might want to ask for a sign that this communication really took place. Ask for a specific sign. And in the coming days, you'll most likely get it. Then the prescription is repeat as necessary.
Perfect. I like that you really stressed the intention aspect of this, because in the New Age metaphysical world, the word intention has become sort of, it's used so much that it's almost meaningless. So I wonder if you can, let's talk about how powerful intention really is.
That's too bad if it becomes meaningless, because it is the prime mover of consciousness. It is so far beyond meaningless. It is the most meaningful thing you can harness to have any connection. My intention when I connect in a reading for people is that the greatest good be served, that those loved ones who will most help my client be present. And it happens. It's what moves consciousness. It's how we create with consciousness. So have the clearest possible intention anytime you do anything, and know that you're guided by spirit. May that be part of your intention, and then watch how that changes things for you.
Yeah, and also when it comes to people asking, do I need to invoke protection? Will I be allowing evil spirits, that type of thing in? And again, that's where intention, where I intend to only connect with these specific higher frequencies. I think that's, for me, is where intention has the most power.
Yes, that is the perfect intention for that. And I'd also like to just note that when we do, if we do have experiences that frighten us, and then some people might label that as some kind of evil or negative experience, that is only happening to you to point out where you can find more light within yourself. My friend Brenda in Spirit told us that we're all walking wounded, and you can see the scars in the aura from the spirit world. But those that you heal, they glow like glowworms. I love that imagery. So any energy that's not of the light might be drawn to certain wounds, just to point out to you, there's one you might want to light up with your own inner light. So if we already affirm, I am the light, you know this, you're automatically healing from the inside out. You're showing all other aspects of consciousness. This light is the most powerful tool I have. There is nothing in this moment that I choose to work on. Only the highest light is allowed around me. And then moving forward, anything that causes you fear, you ask, what is it that needs to be healed here? And start asking your loved ones to work with you in healing that, because most of our wounds come from relationships, don't they?
Indeed,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, we've talked about sort of having spontaneous, instantaneous healings, as you mentioned, with some of the people you've worked with in the past. What about somebody who it doesn't seem like healing is happening? What would you recommend?
Huh. I'm asking. Then that's a deeper wound. And that's why we have beautiful energy healers in this world. And that's why we have relationships with energy healers. The day-to-day blockages, you might call them, that we have, we can work on that with our own processes, such as chakra clearing. Many methods work to clear out the lighter stuff. But some people are carrying heavy things, and that's why there are beautiful light workers who are called to do different techniques. So that's another thing. You can ask your own loved ones in spirit, guide me to exactly the right person who can help me with this.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Now, I want to make sure, because we're not quite out of time yet, but I want to make sure I don't forget to mention your website. You've actually got two. One is SuzanneGiesemann.com, and the other one is dailyway.org. What's the difference between those two sites? What can people find?
Gosh, I just did a little video about dailyway.org. That one is a way to get directly to the daily messages I get from these guides I'm talking to right here. Thousands of messages in there, all really short. And there's a place to sign up in the right column to get them by email every day. What blows me away, Lisa, is these days when everybody gets so many email, there are about 10,000 people that get those messages every day. It's grown so much. It was like 3,000 a year ago. It's exponential because we're going through such challenging times now. People feel the energy in these messages, and what we need is to be uplifted, to know we're loved, and these messages do it. I get comments every day. This one was for me. I needed this. So dailyway.org is just a beautiful way to balance out the negative things we read every day with something short and insightful and high energy. That is a page of its own within my own website. It's like a back door into the website. And so SuzanneGiesemann.com is so loaded with tools and gifts that help people learn to make this connection yourself. That's my goal, that people don't need the daily way because they already can connect and know you are part of one big web.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Not just, I'm glad that your mailing list is growing, but just the fact that people are beginning to really be attracted to this kind of information. And my personal opinion, as far as ancestral healing, is like our ancestors are really sort of coming forward even more now because they see that we're sort of at this turning point and we need their help.
Oh, Lisa, I'm really glad you gave me a chance to make that point. Our thoughts are not all our own. It comes out in readings all the time that they know what we need, our loved ones in spirit. They know how to help us, and they put into our consciousness things to do, places to look, thoughts that we have. So funny, because every time before I do a reading, I check in with Brenda, my guide, to make sure I'm in tune, I'm ready to go to work. And I say to her, tell me something going on in our mutual friend Lynette's life now. Every day she gives me a current event with Lynette, and it is stunning, like she just curled her hair 5 minutes ago. But many times she tells me things that Lynette merely thought about. And Lynette comes back and says, oh my God, she's such a spy, you know? But this is because our loved ones know our thoughts. They not only see us, they're in our thoughts, and they put many of those thoughts in there, like turn on the radio right now, because the lyrics of that song are the exact thing I want you to know. That's how I feel. You know, that kind of thing. There's so much a part of our lives, so much trying to heal our lives now. That's what I want everybody to know.
Right, perfect. I'm so glad that we went in that direction. Wonderful. Now, is there anything that we've talked about a lot of things? We've gone off on a lot of different trails than we really intended to, which is wonderful. Is there anything that we've either forgotten to talk about or that is coming up that you think we should go ahead and bring up before we wrap?
I have some new meditations coming out with HemiSync. In fact, one at the end of, let's see, they'll be out just this first quarter of the year very soon. And I'm thrilled because it came from Spirit, and it's a whole new series called Tools for Awakening. And the very first one is getting to know your true nature. And it was completely dictated by Spirit. They woke me up at 3 a.m. and sent me to my computer. I'm just sitting there, and the whole narrative came out. Beautifully channeled music by a wonderful composer named Jim Oliver. Then later, before the first one even went to be, produced, they gave me the second one in the series. So Spirit knows that we're all at this tipping point where people are ready for the deeper awareness of who we really are, our true nature beyond the soul. All of our ancestors and all of us arise from this one beautiful field of consciousness that is love. Love at our very essence. And this new series is all about giving us the experience of that. So I'm excited and grateful to Spirit.
I look forward to that. And I'm assuming that will be available on your website?
It will be, sure. And anybody that's on my newsletter will get a notice of it when it's out anytime now.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again, Suzanne. It's always so mind-opening and joyful to spend time with you. I appreciate you setting aside some time for us today.
Well, thank you. I could ask my husband hours on end about this beautiful subject, because once you find out who you really are, shining our light is why we came here. If I can help anybody else to do that, it's a blessing. So thank you.
All right. Once again, I've been talking with Suzanne Giesemann, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation in the Ancestral Healing Summit.